How to tell somebody that you test positive for herpes, or for better words, how to disclose. This is the workshop. Let me start this workshop by announcing that I'm not here for the disempowered version of you. This is not going to be a session where I teach you how to disclose your status to cater to the heavily stigmatized version of yourself. This workshop is designed to remind you that you are worthy and enough. It is about disclosing from a place of knowing about yourself rather than from a place filled with shame. What will we discuss? We're going to talk about internalized stigma versus rejection, self-acceptance versus acceptance, when to disclose, what is healthy sexual communication, and how to disclose. My story begins in 2015 when I discovered I tested positive for herpes during a sick call at the Army doctor, where I had gone to check to see if I was pregnant. 2 weeks earlier, I had what I thought was just a razor bump, and the doctor initially agreed. However, I insisted on having the area tested. By the time I received the results, I'd forgotten about the bump, focusing instead on the positive home pregnancy test I had just taken before my visit and the symptoms I was experiencing. When the doctor entered, she asked if I wanted the good news or the bad news first. I chose the bad news, and that is when she informed me of my herpes diagnosis, followed by the news that I was pregnant the very next day. It was quite the double whammy. Yes, I had my baby. Yes, I delivered vaginally. And yes, my son is herpes negative. And if you're interested in hearing more about my experience with herpes during my pregnancy, I recommend checking out the pregnancy workshop on the Resource Hub or on this channel. Today, however, we will be discussing disclosure as someone who has lived with this virus for nearly 10 years. My name is Shayna Singleton. I'm a certified wellness coach with a bachelor's of science in food science and culinary arts. I am the founder of Hey Cousins, your all-in-one herpes resource hub. Here, you can access so many different resources, including community support groups, information on triggers and symptoms, tips for preventing outbreaks, holistic suppression methods, updates on herpes vaccines, dating advice, mindfulness practices, and essential facts about the virus. All with 24/7 support. Since 2020, I've been dedicated to advocacy and education, and I'm excited to welcome you to the largest herpes awareness platform available. I am someone who prefers to be intentional. Once I became aware that my herpes diagnosis caused me so much pain, it led me into situations where I was not disclosing, sabotaging relationships out of fear of disclosing, and fantasizing about a life with someone simply because they did not care that I had herpes. I had to tell myself, let me take a break from dating because I feel broken. I don't want to date from a place where I'm seeking love and acceptance when I don't even give myself love and acceptance. In my years of living with the herpes virus for almost a decade and coaching people who test positive for herpes for nearly 5, I've learned that when we approach dating from a heavily stigmatized place, rejection often doesn't stem from the fact that you have herpes, but rather from how intimidating you make having herpes seem. Imagine telling someone you have herpes and breaking down in tears while recounting your sad story, portraying yourself as a victim, mentioning your ex who gave it to you, and saying things like, "It is okay if you don't want to be with me." When you do all of this, you unintentionally push away potential partners. They see how sad and distressed you are and unconsciously decide that they don't want to be in the situation. It's a turnoff, and they may think, "This is horrible. I don't want to move forward." Now, this is not always the case, but consider this. A person who accepts you after you've done all the sad and lowly, woe is me stuff is likely to be a narcissist or a manipulator. They might be attracted to your lack of confidence, your feelings of inferiority, and your lack of self-worth or self-acceptance. Conversely, you might be rejected by those who don't want to see you in such a low place with such low self-esteem. On the flip side, when you learn to make your self-acceptance enough and stand on your worth, something different happens. A close friend of mine started dating a man who tested positive for herpes. And she told me that he was so comfortable and so confident with his status. He was so informative and had routines in his life that catered to his health and living with herpes. She said that his self-love was evident and his confidence and comfort with himself ultimately made her feel confident and comfortable with moving forward with him, knowing that he tested positive for herpes. When you do the work on yourself, you avoid and or get rejected by those narcissists and manipulators. I mention this because they are not attracted to self-love. They are not attracted to self-worth and confidence. Instead, people who appreciate those qualities will start to be attracted to you. If you disclose confidently and from a place of self-acceptance, you give potential partners the safety to do the same. I must add that when you date from a broken, heavily stigmatized version of yourself, you tend to settle for the first person who accepts you or think, this person must love me because I have herpes. It may seem comforting because you don't love and accept yourself with herpes. So when someone else can do it for you, it makes you feel like you are allowed to do it for yourself. I've had so many cousins. If you test positive for HSV1 or HSV2, you are a cousin who had ended up in relationships they don't want to be in because their sole reason for being with someone was that that person accepted their herpes. However, when you date from a place of self-acceptance, you start to understand that someone's acceptance of your status is bare minimum. You begin to realize the essence of who you are and the value you bring into someone's life. Enough to know that your herpes diagnosis has absolutely nothing to do with your worthiness to experience love. The narrative changes to, you have to accept my herpes. You have to accept all of me, or you don't deserve any of me. Remember, someone accepting your herpes status is bare minimum. Is that person your ideal mate? Do they meet your requirements? Do they cross any of the boundaries you have set for yourself? And how would you know if you cannot see your target? How would you know if they ever made time, if you never made time to create a clear vision? Positive energy. Your energy will introduce you before you have a chance to speak. We vibrate on a low frequency when we fuel our fears and make our self-judgments reality. So examples of some low frequency thoughts. What if I'm rejected? What will he, she, they think of me? I feel so dirty. Why did this happen to me? No way he, she, they will ever want me. My sex life is over. I'm going to get ghosted after I disclose. I do not deserve to be in a relationship. What if I pass this to someone else? What if he, she tells someone else? If you think any of the above thoughts about yourself, guess what? I believe you. But it's not because you tested positive for herpes, and it's not because you have herpes. I have herpes, and I don't get chosen. I do the choosing. And I'm damn sure not dirty. When we go into disclosing with negative thoughts, you're already going into a situation with low energy, and that energy is highly contagious. My favorite analogy is this. If you are having a wonderful day and you are driving, then someone cuts you off, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get upset, honk your horn, and maybe try to flick that person off. That person is probably having a bad day, might be late for work, and that's why they cut you off. A complete stranger's energy has now just entered your car and took over your energy. Be mindful of the energy you surround yourself with. Be mindful of the energy you put out. Do other people, places, and or things have more control over your energy than you do over yourself? Are you selfish with your peace? Or do you find yourself choosing to be upset over being at peace? Are you influenced by the energy of the room, or do you influence the energy of the room? Do you set an intention with any type of energy you bring, or do you just wing it? When we go into disclosing with negative thoughts, you are going into disclosure with low energy. And this will result into the following. You should not expect someone to not believe in the stigma if you believe in it. You should not expect someone to think highly of you if you don't think highly of yourself. If you walk into a disclosure scared, you are likely to scare someone away. If you are vibrating on a low frequency, carrying low vibrational emotions such as fear, rejection, shame, if your energy is anything less than positive, you might not be ready to disclose. Rejection and acceptance will come whether you have done the work to accept your herpes or not. We suggest you do the necessary healing work to learn how to love yourself unconditionally, because even if you do not get rejected, you might attract someone who's attracted to the fact that you have not accepted your status. The type of people who are attracted to sadness, bitterness, and desperation are narcissists and master manipulators, those who benefit from you not accepting yourself. When you show up to disclosure, owning your truth, knowing your worth, and embodying self-love, master manipulators and narcissists will reject you. They are not attracted to strength. Instead of thinking of the worst case scenario, like what if I'm rejected? What if they tell my business? List all the best case scenarios. What if the person has herpes too? What if they've dated somebody with herpes before? What if they view the risk of losing you greater than the possibility of getting herpes from you? On top of best case scenarios, remind yourself that you only like people who like you, that someone not liking you is unattractive, and that your person will value you more than your diagnosis. Imagine revisiting a time when you believe you were STI free. If someone you were interested in disclosed their status to you, how would you have reacted? Given the chance to decide whether to pursue a relationship with someone who has the virus, would you have chosen to move forward, ghost them, take time to think about it, or place them in the friend zone? Be honest with yourself. There's nothing to prove to me. When I reflect on my past, I realize my reactions would have varied. There were individuals in my past I would have pursued still. Others I probably would have ghosted, and some I would have friend zoned. And even some I would have needed some time to consider. I didn't always think this way. It has been a journey of understanding. I used to approach disclosure as a victim, recounting the same sad story about how I got my herpes and expecting rejection. I was sad and it showed. Through my journey of self-love, I discovered a greater purpose in my worth. Understand that the person you're disclosing to has the right to feel however they want to feel. With self-love, validation should be the least of your worries. They might want to move forward with you. They might ghost you, take their time to think about it, or even friend zone you. This is how we as a collective break the stigma. By giving people a choice so many of us within the herpes community never had. Even if there is a rejection, feel good about giving people the opportunity you've never gotten. That is worth celebration. Realize that after disclosing, the person might need a few moments to process. Don't assume that they don't know anything about herpes and start to overload them with facts. That might come across as you're trying to hide something. Oh, I have herpes, but one in blah, 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 blah people have herpes and it's very common. You know what? Don't do that. Give them some time to process it. Let go of your fear. Focusing on fear of rejection only distracts you. Pay attention to their reaction. Are they shocked, taken back, grossed out, confused, conflicted? Remember, energy will introduce you before you have a chance to speak. Now let's talk about healthy sexual communication before we get into the actual disclosure. What are some things you all might make a point to communicate when having the sex health talk? Pause the video right now and take some time to reflect on it. Again, What are some things you might make a point to communicate when having the the sexual health talk? The first question you should ask yourself, well, what is safe sex? When I asked myself this question, I decided to check out Planned Parenthood's website, and it emphasized that safe sex is primarily about safeguarding oneself and one's partner from sexually transmitted infections. While this can be undoubtedly true, I find an issue with the message that it conveys. Safer sex extends beyond merely protecting against STIs. It encompasses clear and healthy sexual communication. It establishes clear intention, safeguarding against engaging in sex when not emotionally ready, shielding against painful sexual experiences, safeguarding against unhealthy sexual practices that may lead to conditions like bacterial vaginosis, preserving one's energy, receiving comprehensive sex education. Safer sex is not only about protecting oneself and one's partner, it's an holistic approach applicable to anyone engaging in oral sex, anal sex, vaginal sex, or genital skin contact. It is crucial to define what healthy, safe sex means for you. This ensures that you don't compromise and engage in mediocre or unsafe sexual experiences solely for the sake of someone accepting your status. Knowing your desires, communicating them clearly, and advocating for what is essential steps in achieving and fulfilling a safe sexual experience that you seek. You only get less when you settle for it. Do not settle for less. No more engaging in sex when you're not ready. No more bypassing the foreplay you need to relax your vulva, ladies. No more doing positions that hurt for the pleasure of your partners. No more letting people finger you with dirty fingernails. Yes, that extreme when it comes to the sexual health talk. No more faking orgasms, etc., 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 etc. It's time to know what you want and to speak up about it. And we do this during the talk. The talk shouldn't center around your herpes diagnosis or the fact that you have herpes. Herpes needs to be a part of the talk, but the talk is way more than the fact that you have herpes. When to disclose. Now, let's talk about the timing aspect. When is the most opportune moment to disclose that you have herpes? My perspective is to share this information when you are contemplating intimacy with someone. Some argue that it might not be fair as it involves waiting for emotions to develop. However, I challenge that notion of fairness in this context. If the person is certain they do not want to engage in sexual activities with someone who has herpes, disclosing sooner rather than later respects their time. That is what's common, what society likes to think. I propose an alternative viewpoint. Instead of focusing on wasting their time, consider the importance of establishing trust. Don't you desire the assurance of trusting someone wholeheartedly before divulging your medical information? Personally, with me being public about my status, this means timing doesn't really apply to me. But if I were private, I would choose to disclose only when I believe someone is deserving of engaging in a sexual relationship with me. This leads to a thought-provoking question and an exercise for you to do alone. What qualities do you look for that deem someone worthy of entering into a sexual relationship with you? I'll say it again. What qualities do you look for that deem someone worthy of entering into a sexual relationship with you? Who is your ideal partner? What qualities does your ideal mate have? What are the green flags? What are your red flags? Are you your ideal partner? What makes someone worthy enough to get in an entanglement with you? Pause the video and take some time to reflect. Regularly reflect on these qualities, especially when you're thinking about moving forward with someone. Remind yourself of your answers. Commit them to memory and make a promise to yourself today that you won't settle for anything less. Someone out there exists who will meet all of your criteria. However, if you settle for less, choosing anyone who merely meets the bare minimum and accepts your herpes, you risk preventing yourself from encountering the person who genuinely aligns with all of your criteria. So let's dive into the conversation about disclosure. And I want to express my perspective on herpes disclosure. I've never, ever been fond of the idea because, in my view, when people ask, how do you disclose? It seems like they're seeking advice on how to manipulate someone into wanting to be with them, despite knowing that they have a herpes diagnosis. This approach, in my opinion, only fuels the existing stigma. I prefer having an open conversation about sex, a conversation we should all be having, whether we have herpes or not. Now, let's talk about what you should not do. Firstly, avoid sharing your sad story about herpes during the disclosure. Instead, seek the support of a coach or a therapist to unpack and heal any emotional baggage. When you intertwine your herpes diagnosis with a sad narrative, it tends to make the diagnosis sound melancholic. Your demeanor, your tone, and overall presentation may reflect sadness, conveying discomfort and lack of self-acceptance. This can make it challenging for the other person to feel at ease or accept your status. Individuals attracted to your perceived lack of self-worth, acceptance, and love may again potentially be narcissists or manipulators. Embracing your status with confidence, knowledge, and self-love tends to be a little bit more alluring. Secondly, avoid bombarding your partner with statistics and data. Presenting these facts may come across as an attempt to dress up the situation and convince the person to be with you. Instead, focus on creating an open and honest dialogue without trying to sell yourself. Remember, we're not in the business of chasing. We should be in the energy of attracting. Making the conversation feel like a sales pitch can make it very intimidating, and nobody wants to move forward when things feel scary. Lastly, refrain from saying, I understand if you don't want to be with me. This statement can sound disempowering and come across as somewhat pathetic. From my perspective, I don't understand why someone would risk losing the opportunity to be with me. The risk of losing me with all my qualities and attributes outweighs any potential risk of possibly contracting herpes from me. That's just how I feel about myself, and I stand on that. Setting the tone. We want a high vibrational tone. We want a positive tone, right? So rule 1, be intentional. Remind yourself of your intentions, your boundaries, and your standards. Remember, what you need to communicate regarding your sex health needs outside of disclosing your herpes status. Show up to the community meetings. Pop up on a hub. We do disclosure practices together. We've had these conversations where it's a little bit more interactive and less press pause and play. Come join us. Rule number 2, avoid buildup. Don't say, I have something I need to talk to you about. This creates an unnecessary tension and anticipation. And honestly, I just don't like it. I hate when someone tells me they need to tell me something and they can't tell me right away. Because then it makes me think of all the possibilities of what they could possibly have to tell me, whether it's positive or negative, all damn day. And it builds up this, again, unnecessary tension and anticipation that doesn't need to be there. Rule number 3, use clear language. Avoid using terms like HSV, which might not be understood by everyone. Use language that is clear and easily understood, like the word herpes. Rule number 4, disclose in person. I recommend face-to-face disclosures. Text messages can be misread. You want to feel and influence the energy around the disclosure. If you completely dread disclosing in person, I suggest not deviating from your norm. If you guys are always together, texting the disclosure might bring a negative energy. If you guys are always on FaceTime, texting the disclosure might bring a negative energy. If you guys always pick up the phone and talk to each other, texting the disclosure might bring a negative energy. Do not deviate from your norm. And again, I just suggest face-to-face disclosure. Disclosure might seem hard and scary because it's new, but erase those words from your vocabulary. Growth comes from discomfort. Practicing disclosure with family, strangers, and friends to become comfortable with the process, yeah, it works. It's kind of like riding a bike. It's scary when you first get on that bike with no training wheels. It takes some practice to become comfortable and confident riding that bike with no training wheels. And then once you've done it after a while, it becomes second nature and the fear that disappears. That has been my experience and the experiences of others when it comes to disclosing their status. But you need to get ahead of the game by practicing, having the talk. Now, within the community, we have followed Dr. Evelyn Stacker-Stars. She has set up the sexual health conversation in such a flawless way, and she helps you navigate some of the things that might be important to you that you want to bring up. I highly suggest you go check out the replay of her workshop, the replay of our support group meetings where we've all done that together and watched her workshop together. It really helps. Also check out the disclosure practice replays as well. Now, here is an example. This is very short of just a healthy sexual communication dialogue. I really like you. I'm ready for us to take our relationship to the next level. My health and open sexual communication are very important to me. All right. You can start there. Now, here's just a few questions that both you and your partner are going to answer and ask of each other. When was the last time you had sex? You're going to answer. He, she, they're going to answer. When was the last time you had unprotected sex? When was the last time you were tested for an STD or STI? Have you ever had an STD or STI before? This really sets it up because by age 25, 1 in 2 people have had tested positive for an STD, right? So most likely they probably have had chlamydia before, and this is sometimes just to humble the other person. Some people will use this time to request a full panel STD test from their partner just to see if they have herpes, because a lot of people don't know that they have herpes, and then wait for you both to show your test results to one another to disclose your herpes diagnosis. You don't have to do this, but this has brought a lot of ease to some individuals within the community. Always require a full panel NCD test. This avoids, even if they say they accept your herpes diagnosis, this avoids in the future them testing positive for herpes and possibly blaming it on you when they've already had herpes to begin with. So make sure that you are requiring that from your partners. Now, this is just a brief video. If you're looking for more details, if you're looking to get within the community and do disclosure practices with us, if you want to see this workshop, but with the community involved and actively answering the questions, there's the replay on our resource hub at www.patreon.com/heycousins. We are there. All the replays are there. The STARS workshop is there to help you navigate your sexual health conversation when it's time to disclose what you like, what you don't like, your safe words, your intentions. Are you monogamous? Are you polygamous? Are we committed? Are we not? All of these questions have to be asked and answered during the healthy sexual communication talk. Thank you